Hello, my name's David Seaman, and this is the Three Lions Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Three Lions Podcast. Hope you're well. My name is Russell Osborne and this is an independent England football supporters podcast. Yes, that is a new intro. With Gareth deciding to make the inevitable decision to step away from the England manager's job, I felt this was the opportunity to make a change. And David Seaman kindly recorded me that a couple of years ago. So I thought it's still got that feel to it and I should use it. Although I've got something else in mind for the future. May not be permanent. We'll see. That last game, Spain in the final. Still painful to think about. I don't think we'll ever get over it. 2 Euro final defeats in a row. Something that no other nation has on their CV. I guess the Dutch, they know similar. They lost 2 World Cup finals in a row back in the 70s. Then West Germany, they done exactly the same following the Dutch, and they lost 2 World Cup finals. No point looking back, only forward. Feeling positive. We have a Nations League campaign coming up soon. Tickets already booked for Finland at home, and an application in for Ireland away. Then there is the 2026 World Cup qualifying draw. That'll be made in December, so plenty to look forward to. I do say about not looking back, I'm going to be hypocritical here, because to be honest, that's what I'm going to do in this episode. And also, in a few episodes to come, I will be chatting with some fans about their memories of Germany. So stay subscribed, you'll not miss them. I took a break from the podcast after recording 7 episodes throughout the tournament. Of course, since then, the major news was on the 16th of July, Gareth Southgate stepped down from the top spot, 2 days after that final defeat. So it feels apt that my first episode back, I should just take a look at him and his time at the helm. I'm sure in time I'll do a full episode in the Managers series, but that's a while off yet. In all the time I've done the podcast, we've never actually changed manager. So this is new ground, really. So this is my look back on Gareth's time in charge of the Three Lions and my thoughts. Chances are much of it will have already been said, because I guess the majority of us will kind of feel similar. I guess my first thought when the news broke and I was at work, it was mid-morning, was that of relief. Not on my part, but more for him, I think. For the past few years especially, I think the pressure has ramped up on him from fans, the media celebrities, maybe even pressure that he'd put upon himself. At times it felt toxic, hearing and reading some of the things people said about him. It'd be impossible to avoid it. You've got to be a special type of character to not let it eat away at you. I'll be honest, I took the time to actually write a letter to him, to wish him well and thank him for his time in charge. It's often been said that the England manager's job is just as hard as that of the Prime Minister. We all think we can do a better job, shouting from the terraces, the pub or the sofa. Or those that are really keen to express their point of view will do it loudly through social media. Whoever comes in next can expect the same amount of pressure and scrutiny. It's a job that really needs a lot of consideration, not just for themselves, but for the effect that it can have on the people around them, their close family. I wouldn't do it, to be honest. But let's go back to the beginning, when Gareth came in following the shameful exit of Sam Allardyce, who, despite the way he went, remains the only manager to have a 100% record. There is a massive asterisk next to that, but it is what it is. And it was the 27th of September 2016 when the FA made it public that he would make the move up from the under-21s to the seniors. This a couple of months after saying he didn't want the job after the resignation of Roy Hodgson. But he was persuaded to take the job on a 4-game interim period. Those 4 games saw him first win against Malta at Wembley, a draw with Slovenia, a 3-0 victory over Scotland, which will always go down well, and then a 2-2 draw with Spain. The job was then his, and the job of getting to Russia for the 2018 World Cup was also his. And the challenge was achieved by finishing top of that qualifying group. And the FA, well, they were committed to Gareth, with the FA's chief executive Martin Glenn saying that he'd still be in charge even if England lost all their group games in Russia. And it was around this time when I met him, April 2018. It was at an England supporters event held at Walsall's ground, the Bescott Stadium. It was an event where fans were briefed on Russia and the intel that had been learnt about the country. Also there was Darius Vassell and Alex Scott, who hosted the evening, and was on the beginning of an upward curve to where she is now. But the main attraction was England manager Gareth Southgate. That whole episode, they can still be found at your podcast provider of choice. It's episode 20. And I'd only been doing the podcast on my own for a short period of time, and here I was, being given the chance to interview him. Nervously, I waited at the end of the queue as he chatted with everyone before me, signing autographs too. But my chance came, and he was so accommodating. So once more, here is my short chat with him.
Enjoy. Yeah,
so here we are at Walsall Football Club, and I have the pleasure of interviewing England manager Gareth Southgate here at the England Fans Forum.
How you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you very much for taking the time to speak to us. If I could just ask you a couple of questions. Is this the dream job?
Well, it is an incredible honour. So I was saying earlier to the supporters that were here, my dream was to play for England. You know, that was my only goal in life when I was a kid. And so to do that was the most amazing thing. I couldn't say that it was my dream to manage England because I didn't think of managing until I was in my 30s, really. So, but then, of course, when you are a manager, to manage your country is the greatest honour there is possible. So now it's a case of okay, it is an honour, but we've got to do the job as well as we possibly can. So it's important that we that the detail of how we work and the preparation that we put in is spot on.
You've obviously come through the whole England setup, being under 21 manager. Do you feel a responsibility towards those younger players to bring forward?
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the strengths of our current system throughout the age groups is that we are all connected. I'll spend as long talking with Steve Cooper in charge of the under-17s as I will with Adi, who's in charge of the under-21s. And the beauty is that we know all of the young English players, so we know what they're capable of, we know what they're not so good at, we know them as people, and it's really important that we, players that we believe in, that we've been able to give them an opportunity, and we're going to continue to do that.
And looking back on the qualifying campaign, what game, what moment gave you the most excitement?
Well, I think the game up in Scotland was without a doubt the most dramatic.
Yeah.
It's difficult with the qualifying now. Most of the games we play are games we should win, and we play a lot of teams who just want to keep the score down, and it doesn't lend itself to a really exciting game. So I've got to say I've enjoyed the friendlies since we've qualified more, because it's been a different sort of test and we've been able to develop the team. But certainly the game in Scotland, at 82 minutes, you think we've been fine, we've not been outstanding, but we're not in a lot of trouble. And then within a minute and 30 seconds, we're behind and we look like losing. And the roof's coming off Hampden. So was then you get the equaliser. So yeah, it was a game that will live in my memory forever, definitely.
Mine too, as well. It's a great afternoon. Words to England fans going forward.
Well, I think I said to everybody here tonight, two things really come to my mind. One is that as players and staff involved with the team, we are also fans. We've as kids worn the shirts. We've grown up following England in the tournaments, rushing home from school to watch them play. So, we were always kindred spirits in that sense. And the other part is that what we recognise is the commitment from people who follow England is massive. Not only financial, which is huge, but the time and the effort that people go to, to prepare for events like the summer, takes a lot of organisation and time off of work and time away from family. So, we're very conscious of that and appreciative of it, and we hope that we can repay that in terms of the way that we play, and that we can give people. I think people will hopefully enjoy their trips regardless. And if we can get the football bit right, then it'll be, really, really memorable.
Let's hope so. Gareth, thank you very much for talking to the Three Lions podcast. The country is all behind you. Wish you all the very best.
Thank you.
It's been a while since I last listened to that. But it was there and then that he recorded the intro for the podcast that lasted for 309 episodes. And we all know the outcome of Russia. Group stages negotiated, Colombia beaten on penalties, a major victory that one. Sweden beaten with ease. We were in to a World Cup semi-final for the first time in 28 years. All whilst wearing that tie and waistcoat. Sadly, Kieran Trippier's early free kick wasn't enough, as that game against Croatia went to extra time. England tired, and the Croats took advantage. In truth, it was probably a step too far, but the journey had begun. The following year, 2019, there was the introduction of a new tournament, the Nations League, designed to have a more competitive calendar with matches rather than meaningless friendlies. A competition where teams are drawn into groups with relegation and promotion possible. Those in the top groups aiming for a place in the grand final. England were drawn in a group, once again with Croatia, but also with Spain. Now, we'd already lost at home to Spain in the Nations League, so the pressure was on. We drew with Croatia away in one of the first games to be held behind closed doors for England, and also for an England manager. Spain beaten away in Seville, that was a good one, but we were on the verge of going out when Croatia took the lead at Wembley. But an equaliser from Harry Kane and then a winner from Jesse Lingard, who Gareth had only brought on as a substitute 5 minutes before. That victory took us to the finals in Portugal. Ultimately, we finished third in the finals, but we did win another penalty shootout along the way. This time over Switzerland. Sound familiar? Later that year, qualification for Euro 2020 began. England were away in Bulgaria. The game was won 6-0, but the story of the night was the racism that poured down from the Sofia stands. Twice the game had to be stopped with the players on the verge of walking off. Gareth, again in the middle of it. He backed the players in whatever their decision would be. They chose to play on. I'm sure England teams in the past have suffered from racism before, but this was now 2019, an age where we shouldn't be talking about it. But it happened. But fortunately, qualification for the Euros was assured. But with that Bulgaria incident still fresh in the mind, 9 months later, the killing of George Floyd and racism was fast becoming a topic of conversation. Once again, Gareth backed his players and tackled the subject head on. His players would take the knee. Whether you agree with it or not, no other England manager had dealt with this before in any way. They first took the knee in September 2020 in a home match to Iceland in the Nations League. The game played at Wembley behind closed doors because of the pandemic. Yes, the pandemic. Gareth Southgate was the first England manager to experience life in the dugout whilst a global pandemic had struck. It had caused the 2020 Euros to be delayed by a year. There was no rule book as to what to do in this situation, so he wrote an open letter to the fans, to the country, saying, "For everyone in our country, the primary focus of the present and the coming months is undoubtedly to look after our families, support our communities and work together to come through what is clearly the most extreme test we've faced collectively in decades." He realised the effect of mental health on the people of the country. He highlighted it, expressing what a lack of routine and isolation could have on people. Fortunately, Euro 2020 came around a year later, where he and the team took a step further than any England team had since 1966, making a final of a major tournament. The country was singing his name, this time whilst wearing a suit on the touchline. Germany beaten 2-0 at Wembley will be many England fans' favourite moment that they've witnessed, especially for those that were there that day. Ukraine in Rome, Denmark in the semi-final, then Italy in the final. Was it here where his tactical nous was under its biggest examination? Like Croatia in Russia, an early goal, this time by Luke Shaw, but the failure to press on brought Italy back into the game, who equalised. The game, as we know, went to extra time. We were beaten on penalties. Rashford, Sancho, Saka, all failing from the spot. Something Gareth knew the feeling of all too well. But he decided to continue, qualifying with ease for the controversial Qatar World Cup. But before then, perhaps his toughest time was still on the way. It was back to Nations League action, drawn with Hungary, Italy and Germany, losing away to Hungary in a stadium that was supposed to be empty due to UEFA racism restrictions. However, 25,000 children found themselves in the ground. A draw in Germany followed, and because of the trouble at the Euro 2020 final, England were given a match behind closed doors against Italy. That was drawn 0-0 at Molineux, Wolverhampton. But it was the next game, 3 days later, that made him think long and hard about his position as England manager. Same location, Molineux. This time, Hungary. They ran out 4-0 winners in front of a sell-out crowd. It was England's biggest defeat at home since 1928. Never before had they lost by 4 at home. The boos rang out loud and clear. "You don't know what you're doing," the fans chanted. England had been relegated from the top table of the Nations League. Despite it being a new competition, no other England manager had been responsible for that. The Qatar World Cup followed quickly, a tournament location that had attracted a lot of criticism. He had to be diplomatic at times, but he did speak out on the human rights challenges. He realised that the objective was to participate in a World Cup finals, but he reiterated his support for the LGBTQ+ community, saying, "We stand for inclusivity and we are very, very strong on that. We think that's important in terms of all our supporters, and we understand the challenges that this tournament brings with that." Once again, no other England manager has had to deal with a situation like this. All along too with the rise of social media. The world has changed quite a lot in the time that Gareth has been manager of England. It's hard to think back to what life was like back in 2016. Qatar, of course, on the pitch was another success, making the quarter-finals. And he can't be accused of what happened in the moment on the pitch there. This time, it was Harry Kane who missed his penalty, and England were out at the hands of France. The question was, would that be the time for him to call it a day? He decided not to. Euro 2024 in Germany was in his sights. Once again, the qualification group topped. Italy beaten home and away. Not something to take lightly. And England went into the tournament with the favourites tag. It has to be said, those group games, they were a struggle, weren't they? And he and the team came in for some criticism. Talk of substitutions, being reactive rather than proactive. But the team topped the group, which was the objective. But still fans threw plastic cups at him as he applauded them behind the goal after the Slovenia game. But he stepped past that. Round of 16 next, a last-minute equaliser from Jude Bellingham and an early Harry Kane goal saw us see off Slovakia. Gareth was then seen celebrating, punching the air and dancing a jig, this time in his cream jumper. How times can quickly change in football. Switzerland next, and once again another winning penalty shootout. Substitutions came again, this time Ollie Watkins against the Netherlands. That one paid off, and before you knew it, England, for the first time, had made it to a major final on foreign soil. All under Gareth Southgate's watch. Wasn't to be though. In fairness, Spain were the better team, but once again, a milestone achieved. It wasn't the one that we all wanted, and in the end, he felt he couldn't continue, saying, "As a proud Englishman, it has been the honour of my life to play for England and to manage England. It has meant everything to me and I've given it my all. But it's time for a change and a new chapter." It hasn't all been plain sailing, but it's been a great ride. Who knows how it would have been under anyone else. But for 102 games, we won 61, drew 24 and lost 17. 213 goals scored and 72 conceded. A first knockout win in a major tournament in 12 years. A first World Cup penalty win. A first major final since 1966. Of course, now the hunt is on for a new manager. Whoever it is, and there are plenty in the frame, has big shoes to fill. And I'll come to that when it's announced. But whatever the new manager does next will be built on what Gareth has already achieved. And for that, I'd like to say thanks and good luck. Thanks for listening. I hope you've enjoyed it. Just also wanted to say thanks for all the kind messages sent my way throughout the Euros on the podcast. Very kind. Don't forget, you can follow the show on social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Just search Three Lions Podcast. Also, if you'd like to contribute to the hosting of the show, you can do that too. Head to kofi.com/Three Lions Podcast. That's ko-fi.com. Three Lions Podcast. Spell it all out. Any amount is appreciated. It all goes towards the monthly hosting. These are the guys that push it out to all the different platforms that you may listen to the podcast on, be it Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, or even the website, threelionspodcast.com. The domain name for that also has to be paid for. If you want to get in touch, just drop me a line. I'll be back with you very soon. Who knows? We may have a new manager by then. We'll see. But I do have plenty of episodes in the bank ready to go. So until then, take care of yourselves. Cheers.